Welcome, welcome, welcome everyone to the Women's Empower Network. And this morning I am really excited. Well, it's evening for her probably. I am excited to have Caroline Walters with us. And she is going to share her journey about how she came into doing what she is doing. And I look so forward to hearing this story. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Thank you, Ginny, and it's really lovely to be connecting with you here and to be speaking to communities in America, which is, long way from my home. Yeah, very exciting. So what do I do and where did it come from? It's a big journey. I'm 63 now, so there's a lot of years of it, but I believe that it started right at the very, very beginning, as all our journeys do. I was born in the Midlands in the UK. I was born to a mother who really wanted a little girl. She had a son. She really wanted a little girl. She expected me to be a very perfect little girl, a young lady, as they do here in England. And I was anything but. From 6 months old, I was having tantrums and I was a very difficult child. Much to her annoyance. But it took me a long while before I started to understand why I had the difficulties that I had, why I had such high energy, why I was highly sensitive, and why I loved the things that I wanted to do. I couldn't cope with the school, with education, with those kind of systems, and I found it very difficult to understand the world as it was around me. But I was very fortunate that in our family that we moved out to the countryside when I was still very young, and I had a lot of freedom. So I spent lots of time in nature. I had animals. I collected animals, like, any little strays and anything that I could bring home with me. And I was fortunate that my parents allowed that and had the space for it. So animals, nature. But the most important thing for me was that I had to dance. And dancing was, from about the age of 3, we had this little tiny record player. That was my parents. And with one of the little arms that you with the needle that you lift over and you put it down on the 45 RPM record, which, we would remember these things. Some of your listeners might think, what was that? It's a bit retro, but that's what we had. And I had these little records, and about 3 or 4 of them, and I would start playing them and dance my little socks off. I would just dance and dance and dance. And something in me changed when that happened. I really settled into myself. I felt a connection to something bigger than myself, something really important to me. And yeah, to this day, I have had to dance. So that was my way in, my first way in to something spiritual. We were brought up very religious. We went to church, to Sunday school. There was a lot of spiritual teachings in school. It wasn't how I wanted to see God or a spirit. I had my own sense of it. And I went to a convent at one point, and we used to be given scripture lessons. And I can remember the sister that we had, this one particular teacher, and she used to talk about the soul quite a lot. And I was really fascinated with the soul. What is the soul? And I remember getting into an argument with her when she said that animals didn't have souls and they didn't go to heaven. Now here's me with all these animals and this connection to nature. I was furious. And I said, this is a ridiculous notion. Everything has a soul. And I fully believe that. Even my teddy bears and all my fluffy animals and everything, had a soul. Everything, any object, even alive or not, it had a soul. And this stayed with me. This was a very, very potent understanding that I had, and I used to get into lots and lots of conversations around that. So the dance continued down at the youth club, in my bedroom, wherever I was. It didn't matter, the music, whatever I could get my hands on most of the time. As a teenager, it was rock music, Alvin Stardust, I think, at one point, and David Bowie, and anything that I could move my body to. I loved it. And especially down at the youth club when the DJ would just put constant music on and I would just dance away. But as a teenager, I became pregnant at 16. I got in with some tricky characters and I was still a bit wayward, much to my mother's annoyance. But, you know, I got pregnant at 16. I had to leave home. I ended up in a sort of city environment that I had never been in before. And I got married to I had a blind boyfriend. So I was really struggling as a teenager to make sense of the world and to bring up my baby, look after a blind boyfriend who was also diabetic, you know, giving him injections and really taking care of him, taking him for walks and looking after the baby. There was a lot for me to manage. And I really lost my own kind of innocence within that, became too old for my years. But in a sense, I'd always been a bit too old for my years, to be honest. And, you know, I had another baby and this idea of souls remained with me, that I was on a soul journey. He was on a soul journey. My babies were on soul journeys. And you know, I had a big family in the end. I had a lot of children. I moved back into the countryside eventually, into Ireland, and to continue the life that I really wanted to live with my children. It took a while to get there. It was a heavy journey, but I got there and I began dancing again for myself and my children, bringing them up in the countryside with any animal that they wanted pretty much. And I started to look at them and try and understand, well, what is their soul journey? What's their soul purpose? Why are they here? And it was the same questions that I'd asked myself. Why am I here? And what is mine to do? And these little children, I could see the things that they loved, the things they were passionate about. And all I had to do was encourage them with those things. That was what was really important. They didn't go to school for some of the time. They were home educated. And then when they did want to go, they went. But always, you know, we focused on what was most important to them. Yeah. Now, by this time, I'd become a single mom. You know, things had changed a lot. So I was able to have my choice within that system. And you know, carrying on dancing, I came over to New York and I trained with Gabrielle Roth with the 5 Rhythms. Wow. Goodness knows how I managed it with a big family of all these little children, but it happened. And I'd never even been on a plane before, you know, since I had for years and years and years, since I was a very tiny little girl, and I hated it then. Much too noisy and too difficult to manage. So, but I had to do the dance. I had to train to teach the 5 Rhythms because there wasn't a teacher where I lived. I became incredibly passionate about that practice and what that stood for. And I didn't have anything else to, you know, gauge it by or to dance with where I was living. So I did that. I did the training. I began to share the dance in many, many different areas and traveled to other countries and taught. So I've done a lot of traveling. But eventually, you know, that question was still there. What is mine to do? And eventually, through all kinds of different journeys, I won't go too deeply into all of that, but I started to recognize that I had a particular way of understanding the world, of understanding the soul and spirituality and what was really important, what was missing in our existence, in our culture, and beginning to create maps and models. I could create maps. I mean, I would never have thought I could create maps, but I did. One's called the Wheel of Soul's Return and the Polarity of Purpose. And so I created these and started to think, well, this is the journey of the soul. This is the journey I've been on. This is what's helped me. It could help others. Yeah. And so I started looking at archetypes and resources and tools and shamanic work. I did a lot of shamanic work during that time, and then started to put it out there and to share it. And I'm happy to say that that's what I'm doing today. And I started writing about it all. I wrote my first book 10, 12 years ago, published that. And that was, my journey of healing through dance. I had to do a lot of work around sexual abuse and the difficulties I had coming from a beautiful home, loving parents, but a lot of expectations on me. That was quite heavy in that respect. And then having to, go through an early pregnancy and have a baby and the difficulties of my adolescence. So there was that as well. But I wrote my story about how I'd managed to travel through that journey. And I wrote that book. And then 2 years ago, I was reading that book and thought, this isn't quite the way I want this to tell this story. So I revisited the book and I started to rewrite it, and I kind of brought it up to date. And that is this book here, actually. I've got it with me because I thought, I want to. That's Misguided Angel Revisited. So that's my latest book. And I'm so proud of actually having that impulse to go, I have to rewrite this. I have to do this again. And that just felt a very healing thing for me to actually, and I wrote other books as well about the journey and the maps and the body of work that I've developed. So yeah, I don't know if that, I've rabbited on a lot here. I haven't heard any questions yet. But is there anything from,
Oh, that's absolutely okay. I mean, it's just beautiful because we all, it's kind of honoring our journey, and that each and every one of us have a very, very unique journey, but it's that coming into your own. And, and I think the message to a younger person, what would your message to a younger person be today?
Oh, I think to live your life, to live it and ask that question, what is mine to do? I think if we try and interfere too much with our journey, as Spirit has laid it out for us, because I do believe in a sacred contract. I do believe that there is a mission for us to follow from the moment we're conceived, or even before that sacred contract comes into being. We are conceived, we are born with particular parents, with particular situations. I say live your life to the fullest that you can, and look for every opportunity, take every opportunity that you can. But mostly it's for the parents. I would express to as parents, like, let your children be who they are and encourage them with the things that they loved. Don't try to fit them into a box that's not of their making. They don't have to be like all the other kids. They don't have to reach all those benchmarks that say, oh yes, your child is normal. Our education systems are geared towards a certain type. And I feel passionate about little children, getting in touch with their soul and loving the things that they love. And that's how, the wise elders will spot that and support them onto the next part of their journey, and to ensure that they're encouraged with whatever that is. And as they get older, yes, there might be challenges and difficulties, but whatever they are, but it's theirs to overcome that and to find the solutions for that. And if they do, they will turn into much wiser elders for it. And they will be able to share their message back to those who are following them. So we need to know what our journey is. We need to learn about ourselves through that. Be encouraged, be seen in that. Not restricted, not held back, not told to conform or to be something else, but to grow with it. And learn to understand it, do our personal development work, of course, our inner work. And then as we move on, as we get into our older years, we'll know why we're here. And that's the important time. It's not when we're 20, 30, even 40 necessarily. It's when we're elders. That's when we know. And it's okay to just live your life as you need to until then. So yeah, I really encourage parents and teachers, of course.
That's so beautiful. And it's almost like I can totally relate to that, because I grew up in a time, similar parents that, yes, very strict. And I was a tomboy. And so my mother had her hands full because I wanted to climb trees and catch lizards and make elaborate houses and shoeboxes, and all that. And here my mother was, trying to make me the little princess, and I think lived the life that she wanted. And it wasn't until much later in life where she came to visit, and it was kind of like, "You're really happy, aren't you?" I says, "Yeah, as a matter of fact, I am." And as soon as she backed off, then things that she wanted for me kind of were able to show up. But in contrast to that, like you, where I have two beautiful sons. I was the extreme, like very little structure. It's like, this is how I do it, but there's 1,000 different ways to do it. I think that was my favorite line. You find out what works for you and what your life is. And with my older one, it is hard. As a parent, it is hard because sometimes they seem aimless, or I struggled with that balance between them supporting themselves and them being on for this conversation, I'll call it a fairy journey, but he's an amazing manifester, and he always has what he needs. And so he's been a great teacher. So our children can be amazing teachers for us.
Absolutely. Oh, my children were my greatest teachers. I have 3 sons and 3 daughters. I had my boys first, and then I had my girls. They have been the best teachers I could have ever experienced. Absolutely. They've taught me so much about just relaxing, about surrendering, about unconditional love. Those things are so important. And just encouraging them to be themselves, even when it does seem a bit aimless and they don't seem to have goals, but they have beautiful qualities. And it's not just about what they do and what their career is going to be. It's about the beautiful quality that they hold. And that's what sometimes really needs encouraging. That little spark we see in them. Yeah.
And nurturing that.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a really big deal. Yeah, it's a little spark that's come to the earth with them. That's the beautiful, expression of their soul.
The other thing that stands out too is it's almost like when we have a calling, we always talk about the law of attraction or something. And I was listening to the part of the story where you took all your children and you went to New York. And it's like, looking back, you probably, or I don't know if you were thinking about, it's amazing how that happened, but we get too caught up in how things are going to happen instead of, I had this image of you had this calling, this inspiration, and that somehow it came all together for you to follow it and do it.
Yeah, I was driving my car from my home down to this little dance class that I was going to. And it was like a bolt of lightning. Suddenly, boom, I remember gripping the steering wheel going, I'm going to be a 5 rhythms teacher. Oh my goodness, how on earth am I going to do that? I've no idea. That seems impossible. And carrying on, and I went to this little dance class and I said, I'm going to be a 5 rhythms teacher, and getting looked at and people thinking, how's she going to do that? Single mom on the welfare? I don't think so, but it happened. And I don't to this day know how it really happened, how I managed to get the money together, the childcare, the travel, all those things, but one step at a time. And I have a very, loving and trusting God spirit in my life. I believe in that absolutely. And I couldn't do it without my prayers. So, I just handed it over and allowed it to happen. And of course, I had to do my percent of the work. I had to, do what I needed to do. I did a fundraiser, a sponsored dance at one point, and a few things like that. But, I knew it was going to happen. And yeah, it did. And that's been the case with quite a few things that I've done.
I think that's an important message is, there's the inspiration. There's the, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? But then there's inspirations that come, like give you clues as to how you can make it happen.
They do. And if it is your sole purpose, if it is why you're here, then you just keep following and just showing up and saying yes to those experiences. And it doesn't mean they're not going to be tough. You know,
Right.
it is tough. It's a tough journey to follow your soul purpose. If it wasn't, you wouldn't be looking at solutions and finding your way through it and learning lessons from it. And we need that. And, you know, people can say, well, you know, what about people who really struggle and really suffer? Well, yeah, that's a tricky one. You know, I'm very fortunate to be, you know, living in the world that I'm living in, to have the resources that I have here. I can follow my dream in that respect, but I can also be supportive of others who aren't so fortunate, you know, to have some of the resources that I've had. So we all have to help each other to a certain extent as well. Yeah, and contribute, be in service.
There is, and there is those people that do amazing work in the world, and that is their calling, to help those less fortunate in particular situations that we can't even fathom.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I'm so grateful for those people, because I know I'm not one of those in particular. You know, we each have our path, and it's okay. It doesn't make us wrong or anything. It's just honoring the path we're on.
Absolutely, it's very true.
It
Yeah.
is. This is so beautiful. I could talk to you all day long and listen to your stories. I love your voice.
Thank you.
So is there anything, parting words you would like to share with us today that comes to mind?
Oh, parting words. Well, I mean, it's been lovely to share with you some of my journey, and yes, there is a lot of it. I would really encourage anyone listening, if you've got any sense that your calling is there, you know, your purpose is there, and you haven't fully engaged with it or found it, so you're struggling to know what it is, then start dancing and asking questions. Put some music on, whether you're in your living room, your kitchen, it doesn't matter. Just start dancing and let the thinking go, and ask that question beforehand. Let the thoughts go and just wait and see what's presented to you. Or just start writing. Just take a journal, a pen, just start writing, get creative. You know, I'm a firm believer in creativity being helping us to access the information that we need in any one moment. So yeah, that's what I love.
Me too. I love both of those things.
Mm.
Well, it was so beautiful to have you here this morning, and we're going to be sure to put her information above this interview so that you can find it and get in touch with her if you are so inclined to get in touch with Caroline. And Caroline, thank you again so much for being with us today.
Bless you, Ginny. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's been lovely.
Thank you.